CFB Paint back for another episode. I'm your host today, Brian. We've got Steve and Court also with us. We're going to jump right into things today because we've tried to get this pod started a few times, had some issues. That's my audio problem, but we got that all sorted out, and we can talk to you about the impact transfers for the 2023 season. We've seen over the past several seasons the impact that transfers can have on a college football season. The likes of Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow, and Caleb Williams winning the Heisman last year. There's more movement than ever, and it's only going to keep ramping up from here. But a lot in December, a lot after spring, and we want to just dive in to see who are going to be some of the highest impact guys that will shape the landscape of college football this next season. Corey, why don't you kick us off?
All right, yeah. My first guy is Cade McNamara, the transfer from Michigan to Iowa. He lost out on the QB position last year in a fight with J.J. McCarthy. Well, we kind of already talked about this. Harbaugh kind of wanted to hand J.J. McCarthy the keys and gave him an excuse to do it. So Cade McNamara is transferred over to Iowa, and it's kind of like, I'm going to show you what I can do. He's got some interesting tools around him. He's back in that Brian Ferenz offense, which is, we all have talked about this. That offense is terrible. I think Brian and Steve mentioned it in a past episode that he's got a new qualifier on his contract that he has to have 25 points per game or he gets fired or something like that. But in order to help him, they brought in two receivers and a transfer in tight end. Caleb Brown, 4-star out of Ohio State, and then Seth Anderson, who won the Offensive Freshman of the Year in Charleston Southern. Those are two of their top four wide receivers. And then they also brought in the transfer Eric All from Michigan as well. They already have a really solid running back in Caleb Johnson. He set the Iowa freshman record for yards rushing last year and did pretty well. And if this offense can even reach okay, even if Brian Ferenz gets fired and this offense averages like 17 points a game, they might be in good position. Last year, their defense held teams to 14.2 points per game. And if they had scored 17 points per game last year, they would have gone 10-3. If they scored over 30, they would have gone 12-1. They only scored over 30 once last year. If they scored the 25, like his contract says, they've gone 11-2. With Michigan's the only person that scored 27 points or 27 points on them, and then Ohio State scored 54 or something like that. But honestly, like, I'm kind of excited to see like this rebirth. Do we actually have some teams that can challenge Ohio State and Michigan? You have Penn State, you have Wisconsin, you have Iowa. Maybe we have some interesting parts in this Big Ten for once, or in the last few years. But honestly, I'm excited to see him prove himself. Like, he's got a chip on his shoulder, and he wants to go see something. Does he have the right offensive coordinator?
Yeah, man, that's the $1 million question there. I think that's such a great point. Sticking out like, hey, this defense is so good. We would have a totally different conversation about Iowa if they had a competent offense last year. And with McNamara, he has decent skill set. Also has great leadership quality. Was a voted team captain at Michigan before J.J. McCarthy took his job. So the locker room was with him. That ultimately, Harbaugh said, I think I see where the talent is and where I want to go. But that's also a strong quality to have. It is just a matter of, hey, can we work with this person who has no proven track record of, no recent track record of a potent offense?
He also has the confidence. Like, I just loved how he was on that one podcast. I'm reading an article on it. He was on the Room podcast, and during his appearance, he said, quote, "Please just keep saying this is the blankiest offense in college football. Please just think we're going to be so blanky next year, please." Like, just letting people keep talking, keep saying stuff. So he is not shying away from the offensive reputation at Iowa and seems very much set out to change that.
That's cool.
Yeah, and it would be awesome to see, whoever comes out of the Big Ten West not be a complete rollover to whoever, you're playing Michigan, you're playing Penn State, you're playing Ohio State. But to really have some suspense in what's going to happen for the outcome for that game. So if you can get decent offensive play at Iowa, then you never know if their defense comes and brings their absolute A game. They're a problem for absolutely anyone. So that'd be nice, a nice sight next season. Steve, why don't you take us next?
Yeah. The first one that I had, maybe this is cherry picking, but One of the top rated transfers, if you look at transfer portal rankings. I don't know how many people are that deep in the weeds. I am. But A.D. Mitchell from Georgia transferred to Texas. I am pretty excited about this one because it just gives the Texas offense another element. You have Xavier Worthy, you have Isaiah Nair, you have Jatavian Sanders as a tight end. The aerial attack that the Longhorns will present to defenses this next year is going to be pretty formidable. I'm, Ohio State is probably the best in terms of pass catching weapons. I don't know if I see anyone else between them and Texas. I think Texas is your clear cut number two. A.D. Mitchell, for those that maybe don't recognize that name, only appeared in 4 games this past season. Was injured, scored a touchdown against Oregon, but that may not be impressive because who didn't score a touchdown for Georgia against Oregon? But also scored a touchdown against Ohio State in the semifinal game. I think he's been needing just the opportunity, and obviously, provided he's healthy, he gives that offense another dynamic and another deep threat. My only concern about me putting him as one of my impact transfers is the amount of targets he's going to receive. Just with such a depth of talent when it comes to pass catching options for the Longhorns, will he get enough targets to make a real impact? I think so, but it wouldn't surprise me if there's other times where there's matchups that favor one of their other pass catching weapons, and they focus on those, because I trust Sark to really find the mismatches and to continue to give his playmakers down the field lots of opportunities. So I think AD is a good bet to have a big impact on Longhorns offense this year.
And being that he doesn't have to be the number 1 or number 2 wide receiver, you have him as potentially a backup or number 3 even. That's a great player to have. I mean, and a great opportunity to find a lot of mismatches as well.
Absolutely.
If that's cherry picking, this next one is really something else. I have Travis Hunter as one that I'm going to highlight for impact players. The most notable transfer to the highest rated transfer in the transfer portal rankings, for anybody who's curious. Also was the number 1 player in his class out of high school, and the most notable transfer to the Colorado Buffaloes, who will be, I'm sure, talking about a lot throughout the season. Just seeing how that experiment goes. We've never seen anything quite like it. But this guy is legit. He deserved the ranking out of high school. He's a freaky athlete with really good ball skills. Just when that ball's in the air, he very good body control. He's got good athleticism to get up in the air, but he just seems to have it all right. And I think this year we'll see a lot more of him as a wide receiver, kind of coming out of high school and in some of his time at Jackson State, although he had some injuries to work through. Was more of a cornerback that people would talk about. Like, that's where he's going to go. Obviously, played both ways in high school. But given the spring game and given the quality of competition that Colorado's going to be going up against and the need for touchdowns, I think we'll see him on the offensive side of the ball a lot. And his highlights are going to keep us talking about Colorado. A lot of things will keep us talking about Colorado, but his will be among the things that will keep us focusing on them throughout the season. So before we go too far into this list of different players we want to talk about, want to make sure that one gets noted, because he will be on your television screens. They won't let you forget his name, and he's really, really good.
And I'm sure they'll talk about Florida State missing out on him too as well, because they bring that up every chance they get.
Yeah, you got to make sure to have every player's got that one little blip where you got to know, and it's like, oh, he snubbed Florida State on signing day. We're not bitter, no worries.
I also wonder though how much he's going to get double teamed if he plays on the offensive side of the ball, and then if he's a quarterback, great, he's playing single coverage and shut down the best wide receiver. But if he plays on the offensive side of the ball, it'll be interesting to see how much he actually gets exposed, because I don't imagine that they have enough weapons to kind of keep him open. So.
No, and that goes, I'm trying to remember the Kent State, the offensive coordinator there. One of you might be able to remind me, but how much can he scheme with the players that he's got? Because it's all bringing it all together. Shadur Sanders is an upgrade at the quarterback position for them. But yeah, you're right. I think there are going to be times you have to scheme him, not even scheme him open, just scheme him one-on-one. If you can get that kind of coverage, that's favorable at all. Yeah, absolutely.
It's Sean Lewis, Brian.
Sean Lewis. Thank you, Steve.
Steve pretends like he knew that. He looked it up again.
I did. I don't deny that. I did have it in my head. I was like, I think it's Sean Lewis, but let me confirm. Um, yeah, maybe we should have determined like what constitutes an impactful transfer, because you're right. Travis Hunter, I think, will make them better, but I don't see him. I don't know what to think of Colorado. I am concerned about their offensive line in being able to block anyone.
Mm-hmm.
So
Reasonable.
how much impact does he have on the offensive side of the ball? I don't know. I think that's in certain respects out of his hands, which to me is a little bit nerve wracking. But that was kind of my thought process: like, who actually fundamentally changes this team from where they were last year to where they were this year? Now, obviously, Colorado is maybe, they're a totally different team, right? So like,
right,
they weren't one piece away; they were about 85 scholarship pieces away. But I don't know. That was one that I considered, but I thought, like, you know what? I don't know how much he moves the needle in terms of like changing outcomes for games. Like, you're right; he's going to be a highlight reel without doubt. You just have seen enough from him competing against players at the highest level in high school and making them look foolish, that he's good for one or two of those plays a game, but I don't know if it ultimately makes a giant impact on the Buffalo's fortunes as a whole. That was my thought.
I don't think it's gonna
right,
spring. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna spring them to like a bowl game or anything like that. But I look at kind of remembering my ACC days back when Maryland was in there. Stephon Diggs playing at Maryland was that guy who was just unreal. And there's a chasm between him and the next best player on the roster. And what they would be without Stephon Diggs is a totally different picture than what they are with him. And I see a kind of similar situation in Colorado.
Fair.
Corey, why don't you give us the next one?
So my next one is Deshaun McCullough, the linebacker out of Indiana. He was the highest rated recruit ever to commit to Indiana. It was like in the 40s or 60s or something like that. And he played in all 12 games this last year, tied for the team lead in sacks, 4 sacks last year, and was 7th on the team in tackles. And I think he only started like 4 or 5 games. So that's not bad for a freshman. Made a multiple all-freshman, all-American, all-freshman, whatever, rosters. But he's transferring to Oklahoma. I'm interested and excited to see how he gets used in Oklahoma. I feel like Brent Venables, you have some defensive coordinators that work from like your defensive backs up, and then some work for your linemen kind of back. I think Brent Venables kind of is like a little mix of his linemen and his linebackers. From watching him in Clemson, just how ferocious and how all-encompassing his linebackers were, I'm excited to see how they're going to use Deshaun McCullough, and I really expect him to be just use his athleticism, just going to be all over the field. And I honestly think this OU team is going to be a completely different team. I mean, they're not a 6-7 team or whatever they were last year. They're going to be much higher than that. So,
yeah, you also have junior Danny Stutzman coming back with that linebacker core, who I thought was a really solid player when healthy last year. And so, kind of adding to that, I'm a big Brent Venables believer, having watched that Clemson team and some of the things that they do. Whether the offense is up with a Trevor Lawrence or a Deshaun Watson, or it's down, I feel like he was always somebody who gave them a good shot, and they didn't need their best day on offense to win games. So I think that's a major tool given to a very talented coach.
Did he blank Ohio State in one of the semifinals? I can't remember. It was like a 31-0.
I'd have to check on that.
Yeah, a few years back, I think you're right.
Yeah, so we know he's an OC or a DC that has a great mind and can utilize the defensive players he has. We'll just see how he has to fares at Oklahoma. So.
Steve.
Yeah, the next one I had, and it's kind of a transfer plus coordinator combo. So one without the other, I'm not sure I'm quite as thrilled about. But Brennan Armstrong to NC State from UVA, pairing up with Robert Anae, his former offensive coordinator at Virginia. That's a really intriguing connection to me. I think the change in mentality from offensive coordinators there. Tim Beck is now the head coach at Coastal Carolina. I know that the fans of the Wolfpack were not thrilled with his offensive approach. Robert Anae has always shown to be able. He's ran like 4 different offenses in his career, so he's shown the ability to adapt to his personnel, and he has familiarity with his personnel. Knows what Brennan's capable of. Brennan had a really poor year last year under new head coach, and I don't know if he's calling the plays, but has an offensive background in Tony Elliott. It just didn't work. It wasn't the right fit. I think a lot of the supporting cast also left, and that obviously makes things a bit more challenging. But I'm excited to see what Brennan Armstrong can do at NC State, where NC State's defense is going to be salty. It always is. Their offense has been pretty good in the last little bit. I mean, Devin Leary was a really talented player. It was interesting to see him move on from that situation. But I think with the coordinator change and with this transfer quarterback, I expect that the Wolfpack will be able to attack down the field a little bit more than they have in the past. And that's with some talented pass catchers that they had. For whatever reason, they didn't like to throw the ball deep, and particularly on early downs. And I think that that's something that will allow them to be less predictable and therefore more explosive, as defenses aren't able to key in on a lot of the running attack that they would typically do under their previous coordinator. So I'm very interested to see if Brennan Armstrong and Robert and I can work together to get NC State over that 8-9 win hump. They haven't been able to get over that 10 or get to that threshold of 10 wins in a long time. So, or ever, maybe even. The more I think about that, I'll need to take a look at that. But I remember they were one of the teams that was most disappointed that their COVID bowl game got canceled because they were going to get 10 wins with a bowl game, and the game got canceled. So, or they had an opportunity to. I think they were going to. I think they were playing UCLA. So
remind me, Steve. Robert and I, was he the OC last year at Syracuse with Garrett Schrader?
Yes.
So he's used to that. I mean, and he's also been with Armstrong before, but he's like used to that mobile quarterback. He knows how to work well with that mobile quarterback. It'll be interesting to see how he does. Also, I think Tim Beck moved from NC State or from Virginia to Syracuse. Is that correct?
Did I say Tim Beck? I think I said the wrong name.
Okay.
Yeah, because whoever the quarterback's coach at Syracuse was promoted to offensive coordinator, who's a longtime Robert and I disciple.
Gotcha.
And so I think that's Tim Beck. Okay. And I don't know. Gosh,
sorry,
now
Jason
it's gonna.
You said Jason Beck. Yeah.
Oh, Jason Beck. Yeah, I think is it Tim Beck who's the head coach at Coastal Carolina, who was just the offensive coordinator at NC State? Maybe I got him mixed up because the last name is the same.
Yeah, I got him mixed up. I think you got him right. Anyways, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but I mean, you saw what happened to
Coastal Carolina.
All right, yeah, but you saw what I was able to do at Syracuse. He just picked up right where he left off. Like at Virginia, they put up a boatload of points. He went to Syracuse with arguably lesser personnel and made things happen there too. He knows how to scheme. He knows how to evaluate his personnel, find out what they do well, and how that can exploit a defense's weaknesses. He's really good at that. He's always been good at it. And just I think the bevy of offenses he's been exposed to. Again, he at one point was an offensive coordinator running sort of a pro style ish offense here at BYU, and then spent time underneath Rich Rodriguez at Arizona. Picked up some of the hurry up, no huddle stuff. Came back to BYU, ran that with Taysom Hill. He's done a lot of different things. So if there's something that he finds that it works with his personnel and that's going to be able to take advantage of any deficiency he finds in a defense, he's got the tool book to do it, or the tool set to do it, and the playbook to do it. So I'm excited to see how that one shakes out. And NC State, again, is always a tough out in the ACC. I'm excited to see if they can get to 10 wins this year.
Yeah, I thought NJ Morris looked pretty good at the end of last season and was kind of one of the things that was pushing Leary out in the first place. And then they come and bring in Armstrong. I don't know that that's what it was, but that's what I was assuming with the injury and good performance from NJ Morris. But now you give Morris, he's still on the roster. He was a true freshman last year. So he has time to develop and kind of have a more natural progression in his college career, which I think is really good for him overall. He might not like the idea of sitting out a year because of that, but it really kind of sets this not only the team up good for this year, but for years going forward. You're looking a lot more shored up than you were a moment ago, where you're kind of not gambling, but putting it all on, a redshirt or not redshirt freshman, a true sophomore to deliver for you. I'll keep things rolling. I'm going to go on the defensive side of the ball, looking at Bear Alexander coming from Georgia to USC. And this is looking a little bit at a little bit prospecty. Bear Alexander is somebody who out of high school we expected a lot from. We haven't seen loads of production on the field, but everyone still seems pretty high on him as a prospect overall. And the reason this is a really big deal is because USC's defense was the problem last year. USC had it, I think it only had the Oregon State game where I felt like their offense couldn't move the ball consistently down the field and score points. Outside of that, very potent offense. You have the Heisman winner Caleb Williams, and he's at times he's doing things all by himself, but making things happen there. And you have Dorian Singer coming in as another tool for him on the offensive side of the ball. But that defense, good turnover margin, really poor tackling, and really not physical at the point of attack when they needed to be. So that I think has the potential to be really high impact. Also has potential to be no impact because of, again, the prospect nature of Bear Alexander. Not a proven thing that we've seen yet at the college level for large quantities. He got some field time. You see flashes, but you're really projecting into what can you do when we give you a lot of more snaps, and you've got another year working on your body, working on your health. But the USC defense just desperately needs it. And so Alex Grinch in year 2, he's going to need to turn things around for that defense, or this might be his last year at USC as a defensive coordinator. So this one's interesting because I don't, it's the one that I'm least sure of being a high impact transfer, but it has a real possibility to be because of the growth the room for growth there is for that defense as a whole.
Yeah, the USC and their transfers and also their recruiting is just crazy to me. Like, they flipped a team that fast, and they're getting even better players to come in. If you want to go win a Biletnikoff Award or a Heisman Award, you go work for or go to Lincoln Riley and kind of get that opportunity. Speaking of their recruiting, they've picked up 5 commits in the last 24 hours. So, dang.
Hot on the trail.
Yeah.
Scorching hot.
Yeah.
Corey, who do you
2
got?
of those are Florida State targets, which is I'm not happy about, but well, that's okay.
We'll sulk on our own time with those ones for sure. Corey, who else you got?
So speaking of USC, I'm going to go against the rivals UCLA in Carson Steele, running back out of Ball State, 2-star recruit. If you haven't read the story about this kid, you guys should read the stories about this kid. But last year they had Zach Charbonnet. He went 2nd round to the Seahawks. I don't expect this to bring up their team a lot better, but they're going to be the replacement. This guy's going to be awesome. He had 1,160 yards after contact last year, leading the FBS in that. He 96 forced missed tackles, second only to Bijan Robinson. He was playing for Ball State, so that they're a lesser team, but he still played quality players. Averaged 5.4 yards a carry. And then, imagine where he will be behind an actual UCLA offensive line versus a Ball State UCLA offensive line. This is going to be very interesting and exciting to watch. And if you haven't read the stories about him, his high school or around his town, he's known for pushing his mom's minivan for working out. He has a pet alligator named Crocky J, and the Ball State fans are blow up alligators in the stands. This is a fun kid. You got to go sit there and just watch what he's doing and who he is. Also, UCLA is just doing fun things over there. Last year, they brought in chess to help their quarterbacks and their team kind of work on their decision making and their focus. And it started off with the quarterbacks and then kind of got spread through the entire team. And then on top of that, they're bringing in Ken Niumatalolo from the Navy to be the director of player leadership with them to help them teach how to be better leaders. Well, you just had a guy teaching military kids. You think he probably learned a thing or two about creating leaders. So Chip Kelly's kind of going all over the place and kind of creating all this interesting things. And I'm just excited to see how Carson Steele fits into this and how UCLA does. Honestly, when Chip Kelly came back from the NFL, I did not think he was going to be a good coach. I thought people were going to have figured him out, and also he had the weapons he needed in Oregon to be phenomenal. But he's only shown that he can rise to the task and adjust to the league as it changes. So I'm excited to see how they do. That Pac-12 is not going to be easy to win.
No, it's not at all. And I like the Carson Steele, pick for an impact player because I don't think UCLA has named their starter for next season, but it could be Dante Moore. He's a true freshman. And so if that is the case, then, nobody's going to go out there and go, okay, I got a true freshman quarterback. We're just slinging it all the time. You're going to need that reliable play, which they had last year in Zach Charbonnet. But they're going to be looking for, a similar, if not greater output from Carson Steele in the upcoming season.
Yeah, I didn't know much about him, so that's kind of interesting. I'll have to read more into it after you kind of explain who he is. I'd heard lots of buzz that everyone expects him to do some big things, but I I've never once seen him play. Definitely hadn't heard about the pet alligator. Wow.
Yeah,
All right, for my final one, to me, again, like I said, impact. What I'm looking for is those that can kind of take a team from point A and get them to point B. Again, what that is probably defined on a case by case scenario. But I know that one area that the University of Miami really struggled with was linebacker, and they got a really good one. They got his younger brother may start at right tackle for him, but he's a really good player in his own right. Francisco Mauigoa played at Washington State last year. Did you know he had a 90-yard interception return for a touchdown as a linebacker? You got to move if you can do that. It's against Oregon. It's an insane play. I mean, it obviously jumps the route, but just then has the juice and the speed to go 90 yards against some of the players on Oregon's offense and take it to the house. I think that was a big weakness on Miami, and I think provided he's healthy, that weakness has been plugged. I don't think that's going to be an issue for them anymore. I don't think they're going to be able to. Or it probably won't be the same playbook for Florida State running counter about 40 times against Miami this year. If you've got playmakers like Francisco Mauigoa in position to make a difference and to make some stops. So that one to me, I think, has the ability to really impact Miami's from a defensive perspective, especially with some of the things that they've got on the defensive, the exterior of their line. They've got what I think should be a pretty salty pass rush. Interior of their defensive line, you got to keep him clean. That's the thing that I think might potentially hold him back. But he's a really instinctful player, has all the physical tools and the requisite athleticism to make plays, and I think he's going to be put in a position to do so.
Yeah, Miami relied a lot on true freshman linebacker play last year, which is not something that anybody usually wants to do. And there's a number of reasons that led to that. And I like that you said like that issue of concern is gone for them, because they do have like the recruiting. The high school players that are coming in are good, but you got to have somebody to play now, and that guy's done it and will do it in a big way. I think that's a really good shout. I'm going to stick with the same position, but move to I talked about USC before. I'm going to move to another playoff hopeful, and that's LSU. LSU brings in Oregon State transfer Omar Spates to go be beside Harold Perkins. There's two reasons I think this is really big. I guess three. I don't know. There's a lot. Number one, defensive backfield overall is a big question mark. They've brought in a ton of transfers to try and backfill that. I thought about Denver Harris from one of these, but I was like, who knows how high impact a single defensive, player in the best defensive backfield can be. But when you have linebacker play that's good and can kind of help things get sorted out before it gets too messy at times, that's going to be huge. The other part is you have somebody who can keep Harold Perkins free to do whatever he needs to do. In the spring, he's kind of moved to a Mike linebacker role. Last year, he's maybe the best edge rusher towards the end of the season that there was. And I expect him to kind of float around and do a lot of different things for LSU this year, because he is the most talented, perhaps the most talented defensive player in the country, Harold Perkins. And he's going to be a true sophomore. Omar Spates is more of a traditional Mike linebacker in the sense that he sniffs out the ball in a to compare him to somebody. It's very common in sports to compare people to people or players to people who are way better than them. But like Luke Kuechly-esque, where it's like he just seems to know where the ball is going to be, and he gets loads of tackles. He has 8, 9, 10 tackle games every game. He's played 4 full seasons of college football. Because of COVID year, you have additional eligibility, but the least amount of tackles he had this season is 63. He had 83 last year. So somebody who knows where the ball is going to be, somebody's going to be able to plug up the holes in the run game, somebody who's going to find that quarterback where they're trying to leak out of the pocket and stop them before they're scampering for a first down. I think the solid play you get from him allows LSU to be a little bit more creative with their more talented players like Harold Perkins and really cause some havoc. So to go from stopping plays overall to okay, let's get this 3 and out. Let's get a big negative play or turnover that can really put our offense in an advantageous situation. So I think he's far from the best player on this defense. They have Mason. Oh, I'm gonna get the name wrong. Is it Mason Smith? Who's the D tackle?
Mason Smith. Yeah.
Yeah, Mason Smith, who didn't get to play almost at all last season. Really, really good player. I already mentioned Perkins, but Spates, the role that he'll play will be critical for them if they are to make it to that next level to, competing closer against Georgia, perhaps in the SEC title, and vying for a playoff spot.
Brian, I think this is a great call. I think honestly, he's worth an extra win on my win totals list to them because of what it allows you to do. There are so many questions on the defensive backs, but like that defensive line and the linebacker, I mean, you don't have a better linebacker tandem in the nation, in my opinion, than those two. And if they can shut down everything in the middle, good luck. Like, you got to move the ball somehow.
Yeah, I think I was the first on the Omar Spates fan club. I feel like I just need to call out and give myself that credit. I think I said it on a previous version of this pod. Maybe not. Maybe it was just in our texts, but I got the receipts. I'm right there with you, Brian. I think that's a big pickup for the Tigers, just because he's consistently in the right place. You're right. He may not be like a blow you away with his athleticism type of player, but man, what he does in terms of unlocking those other playmakers to go fly around and make plays, because that you've got a reliable, consistent, and extremely productive player right by your side. Man, it's going to be exciting. It's that I think is a pretty big pickup for the Tigers as well.
So haven't gone through. We've each picked 3 players, but I'm curious if we can get just a quick kind of best of the rest. Who else was maybe in your consideration set? Players you thought, they might be up in the top of who would be impactful. Steve, I gave you no forewarning on this. Oh, and I'll give Steve his credit. He texted us probably within the hour that Omar Spates entered the transfer portal and said Florida State should go get this guy.
I want that guy. Yeah.
He was the first of the fan club. We won't deny that, but I've joined the club since and think that it's a really good get for LSU. But Steve, who else did you have in mind for potential impact transfers?
I looked at two others that I considered, and both of them I think are a little bit of a roll of the dice, but both have the potential to pay off pretty big. First one I've said was Hudson Card. He's that now will be the starting quarterback at Purdue. Obviously, they're going through a coaching change. Graham Harrell's going to be that offensive coordinator, so they're doing more of an air raid offense. Hudson Card is proven himself to be, number one, extremely tough. Fought through several injuries at Texas. But also a very capable quarterback. Maybe not quite on Quinn Ewers level. That's no knock against him. Quinn Ewers is potentially all world. But I think for the system, like, that could be an interesting marriage. I don't know if I've seen him really in a true air raid type offense. So we'll see how he adapts and how Graham Harrell tailors that offense to Hudson Card's skill set, because he's pretty mobile too, can make plays with his legs. So that was one that I was interested in. The other one, this is like a very much a boom or bust pick, but JoJo Earle at TCU. He made some big plays at Alabama. Was not super consistent there. I don't want to besmirch him, but it sounded like he may have been in the doghouse with the coaches here and there on that. Didn't always play. And so I'm a little unclear as to why that might be the case. But, I mean, if you want to talk about some opportunities for someone to go in and step in and fill some shoes right away, like, there's a lot of receiving firepower that needs to kind of, Quentin Johnston is gone. Obviously, they'll probably be changing up the offense a little bit with Kendall Briles being the new offensive coordinator, but he got a really good weapon in JoJo Earle. So I'm excited to see how that one plays out.
Yeah,
for me,
really sharp.
Brian,
Go ahead, Corey.
I'm looking at Tanner Mordecai, transfer from SMU to Wisconsin. I'm just kind of excited to see him with Luke Fickell, and then who's the OC that just came over from North Carolina?
Longo.
Yeah, Phil Longo, and to see how he utilizes him, because it'll be kind of fun. He just made Drake May amazing and made Drake May $1 million. Not that Drake May's talent didn't help him that as well, but like the way he designs his offense is going to be great. And so I'm excited to see how Wisconsin does in that, and specifically Tanner Mordecai in that offense, assuming he wins the quarterback position. The other thing is I haven't mentioned we haven't mentioned a single Florida State transfer, and if you're depending on which rankings you're looking at, like On3, 247, Florida State picked up anywhere from 4 to 6 of the top 30 transfers. You can go and pick a number of them. If you want Fentrell Cypress, who didn't look particularly great in spring, we'll see how he ends up doing. Or Jeremiah Byers, the offensive tackle that everybody wanted, or Jaheim Bell that everybody wanted, the tight end. There's quite a number of people on Florida State that, or even Keon Coleman who Ole Miss wanted and Florida State wanted, and then Ole Miss went and got the backup wide receiver on there from UTSA. But I think altogether they'll make a huge impact. I think one separately, if you just had one, it would have made a huge impact. But you have so many transfers that are actually high quality on that team that you can't probably pick just one. So I'm saying the Florida State transfers as a whole.
I looked at that because that was, a team that brought in a lot and a lot of high quality transfers, and you go, well, a lot of, the best pieces at Florida State are still Jordan Travis, Johnny Wilson, players who transferred, but years ago. And that whole roster has been built on transfers, but there wasn't any one that I could say like, this is the one who puts the whole thing over the edge. Cause like you add, 3 new defensive linemen, a couple of defensive tackles and a D end. And it's hard to say like, oh, between those 3, who's going to be the one that pushes it over the edge. But definitely
Brian,
like something to know.
Deep, you have like 7 players that aren't transfers. That's about it.
Yeah. It's and part of that is the world of the NCAA now. And the other part is just how Mike Norvell has gone about revamping the roster since he got to Florida State. And a little bit before that, I think Jordan Travis transferred before Mike even got there. I'll just give a quick couple. I'll do my homer pick alongside Corey. Trayshawn Ward at Kansas State. Kansas State has the quarterback figured out. Will Howard was really good for them down the stretch at the end of last season after he took over for Martinez. But they're losing a huge asset with Deuce as a running back and need to replace that. I think Trayshawn Ward is not Deuce. He's not Deuce Vaughn, but he is a very good running back. He's really good between the tackles, really good before the line of scrimmage. First few steps, really good. He's got great vision. Doesn't have the breakaway speed. That's the big thing that you'll see different as that season goes along for Kansas State is when Deuce Vaughn would have taken that one to the house, Trayshawn Ward will get caught by somebody in the secondary, and that's kind of his limitation. But I think he's still a really, really nice back. Somebody who I'm not happy to see leave Florida State, but glad to see him get a bigger spotlight for his sake. Big Trayshawn Ward fan. Another one that I want to point out is
I'm more of a Trayshawn Ward fan than I am. Who's the running back right now at Florida State? Benson.
Trey Benson. Really?
I prefer Trayshawn to Benson because I feel like Trayshawn doesn't take seconds to get started. He gets the ball and he's gone. He's going to get you 3 or 4 yards almost every single time. Whereas Benson get hit in the backfield a little bit. So I'm really high on him and I'm excited to see him. I follow him on Instagram. See how he does over it.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that assessment. Like Benson, he's the one who you can't let get loose for a second because then he's a problem down the field and he's breaking every arm tackle out there. But probably not as good before the line of scrimmage as Trayshawn Ward. Devin Leary is the other one I want to point out. We talked about him, getting potentially pushed out by good play from younger players, and that's never a good sign when you're more experienced and older and recovering from injury. And this is a combination of coordinator and player again, because that offense really didn't move at all. They have a second-round draft pick, not a first-round draft pick, Will Levis, who doesn't have a very good season, especially compared to the season prior. So they bring in new OC, and they've got a quarterback who's been there, done that at a really high level for NC State. I think we could see a pretty notable turnaround for Kentucky this year relative to last year. They're kind of there's a lot of interesting teams to like see in that SEC East, but particularly I look at them in South Carolina as like, we'll see, what kind of noise they're able to make. Just kind of different rosters, different things happening there. I hesitate to, there's a reason I didn't pick them as my top 3 impact players because they might wind up exactly where they were last season. That's a very real possibility of the result of this. But I think we're going to see improvement on that offense, and a good bit of that credit will go to Devin Leary. Cool. Well, that'll wrap up our impact transfers that we wanted to go over this week. Short show for the week. Any parting shots before we get headed off for the next week?
I called Florida State and Oklahoma in the championship game. I don't know what the score is right now, but
it's 4-0 Oklahoma.
I'm not surprised. Oklahoma's the number 1 ranked team in the nation by a long shot. but this team got a
For
shot.
those of you who are not listening to our previous episode with us now, this is now a softball podcast, and that's what this is referencing. I thought Corey was calling for a a repeat of the Cheez-It Bowl, only in the national title for this next season. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. No further parting shots from the crew. We'll sign off. We are on Instagram. We're on Twitter. We're on YouTube. We're on TikTok now. CFB Paint on all of those. If that doesn't work, CFB Paint _ I believe that's our Twitter handle these days. Follow us there. We're putting out more and more content and little bits for you to enjoy, trivia questions and clips from the podcast as well. So make sure to give us some likes there and some love. Give us questions, things that you want us to address and talk about in our next episodes of the pod. And if you haven't, make sure to leave us a 5-star review and recommend us to your friends. Appreciate you spending time with us. Catch you next week. Peace.